Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. What's up, everybody? Welcome, fellow Blue Collar Mystics. We got a dandy show for you all tonight. I'm really excited to be back streaming here. We're on YouTube. We're on Rockfin. We are also in a Facebook group as well. So thanks so much for hanging out with us. We got a live chat. We can see the Facebook comments and chats and the YouTube comments and chats in here. I got a separate window open for you folks who are on Rockfin, and I'll be watching there too. So feel free to engage, send a question, a comment. I love that. That's the cool thing about doing the live shows. And I'm really excited about our guest tonight, somebody that I've wanted to talk to for a long time, and we're getting to do this publicly and kind of meet for the first time. But he's somebody who I've followed his work a lot. He shares a lot of really profound posts on Facebook, brief, thoughtful. Also, he's into Magick, which I'm a fan of, as you all know, and autonomy and freedom, and not in a cringy way, I'll also add. So I'm very, very happy to have someone who is really knowledgeable about psychology, spirituality, as well as advertising and marketing. The advertising alchemist himself, Nathan Fraser. Welcome to the show.
Man, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I feel like I already know you because I've listened to a bunch of your episodes, so I'm just really excited to be here.
I feel the same way. I've seen a lot of your content, and it's done very consciously, and I would say with intention, and with a thoughtfulness and brevity. We're all striving, I think, for elegance, and elegance in its truest form is usually pretty simple. But also very difficult. So I appreciate your ability to communicate some of these more larger and more complex ideas in less and less words. Brevity is truly the soul of wit, especially as everyone's attention is at such a premium as it is now. And so I think it's a huge value, and I want to inspire and pump everybody up out there who's doing something, and see if we can share some nuggets of wisdom, advice, experience with them as they go out and create their own world, as we are, at the cause of our own little reality bubble here, and we're all going into this very interesting future. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts and pick your brain about it.
Nice. And I will say, we'll get into this a little bit later in the interview, but I am part of the evil marketing industry. And number one rule of marketing is brevity. You got to make the message quick, to the point, clear, concise, and no fluff. And so I try to take that approach when I'm explaining my thoughts on philosophy and magic, the nature of the universe. And so I think there's a little bit of bleed over from my marketing persona into my magical persona on how I communicate things.
That's great. Yeah, a lot of the people that do comedy writing, they say that they just are shaving syllables. And that's part of that whole idea too. It's like, how can we get this idea in the smallest amount of words? It's valuable to be able to pack so much in condensed form. And I love that. I really appreciate that. And also just the encouragement and the I would say the push for other people to do their own thing, and how to communicate, because it's kind of no way around it. We're selling something, like I have friends who are starting their own businesses, starting to do new things, and man, I feel for them on some of those challenges. Some of my friends, I'm like, I don't envy you having to face and answer some of these questions. I know the answers are out there. It's tough sometimes. But as far as digging in and asking ourselves those questions, how we can basically offer value to the marketplace and define that value, is there maybe a little bit of advice or maybe some instruction or even like an exercise that you might know a little bit about to try to like get an idea of what is it that I want to offer, and how can we find the right way to offer something that doesn't seem salesy or manipulative or gross, or, you know, Bill Hicks would be, you know.
I'll say, and I would love it if we could, if you would entertain me in getting into maybe the origin story of how I got into Magick. But before we get into that, I will say that there's a lot of overlap when it comes to running a business, when it comes to identifying your target market, when it comes to knowing what you want as a business owner, when it comes to marketing. One of the things that they all have in common with Magick is the ability to get really clear and to state what you want. I think a lot of people, why they fail with Magick when they attempt it, is they are not used to getting really clear on what they want. They're very clear on what they don't want, and they spend a lot of time focusing on it, and they spend a lot of time getting it, but they don't spend very much time, or they don't know the practice of how to get clear on what they want. And when you start a business, you need to get really clear on, what do I want from this? What do I want from this new venture? And then you also have to get really clear on, what do my customers want? What do my clients want? What do the people that I'm serving want? And if you can't get clear on the wants, you're not going to do very well in business, and you're not going to do very well in Magick.
That's really good. Let's actually, yeah, I like how you kind of stepped us into Magick too, because that's a great. It does everything does overlap. There's no doubt about that. Like across the board, to me, that's a very. What's up, Kevin? Welcome. To me, that's I don't know. I see it a lot. It's very easy for me to see that as kind of a center point. Let's unpack Magick a little bit. Maybe we could just start with like kind of a definition of that, and I would love to hear how you got into it. But let's first kind of define it for everybody.
Oh man. Starting off with the easy questions.
Well, you know, it doesn't have to be. You know,
I'll be completely honest. I don't know. I know that it works. I know that my thoughts impact the nature of reality, and I watch everybody around me doing the same thing. I don't know why, and I am not 100% sold on any particular philosophy. There's ones that I favor. Behind me is the Kabbalion. It's one of my favorite books. It's kind of like my Bible, I guess. I think that it does a very good job of explaining things, but there's other books out there that do a great job as well. I don't really have my own stuck philosophy. I'm not very dogmatic about it. I just know that it works, and I know that there's more than meets the eye going on, and we can get into some of that. The way that I got into it in the first place, have you ever heard of telephone telepathy?
I don't think so. No, I don't believe so.
You think of somebody and then they text you,
Okay.
or you think of somebody and then the phone rings and it's them. So I have throughout my whole life had a very strange sense of deja vu that very much mirrors telephone telepathy. I'll have like this has happened before feeling that everybody describes as deja vu, but then 8 times out of 10, it's followed with and this is what's going to happen next. Christy's going to call, and she's going to be wanting to talk to Sarah. And then half a second later, the phone rings. I pick it up, and it's Christy, and she's asking if my sister's around. Or I get a feeling that something bad is going to happen or something good is going to happen. And then it happens. I feel like I get the deja vu feeling, and I say, oh man, somebody's going to knock on the door. And then somebody knocks on the door. And I've had that my whole life, and I never quite understood. I grew up in a Christian kind of background, so I never really understood what it was, and I just took for granted that it was just my brain overloading, and I was tricking myself into believing that I was seeing the future somehow. But it happens so frequently, and it stopped for about 10 years, and then it started back up a few years back. And okay, I'm gonna diverge just a little bit. I'm into sales and marketing. I work with a lot of high performance coaches. I work with a lot of multi-million dollar business owners. And one of my coaches that I was working with, I'll call him a mindset coach. We'll refer to him as Seamus on this particular call. Um, he was doing a coaching an ongoing coaching process for me, and one day he's talking about keeping your business plans a secret. He's like, here's 3 reasons. He did this whole call on 3 reasons why not to brag about your business plans. And later that day, out of nowhere, I'm not into magic. I'm not into exploring the ideas of magic whatsoever. I think the whole idea is crazy. Harry Potter, whatever. And then for some reason, YouTube recommends me a video, and it says 3 reasons to keep your magic practices a secret. And point for point, every single one that he talked about in the call that morning was in that video exactly, except for it was about magic instead of business. One of them was, don't let other people know your plans, because then they'll start feeding their doubt into your intention, and then it'll get all mixed up. One of them, there was a couple of different ones. And I checked the video. I was like, maybe Seamus watched this video before he did and no, the video was 45 minutes old, and the call was about 4 hours ago. And so I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. And so then I hit him up the next day, and I'm like, hey man, do you believe in magic? And he won't answer me. He's really like hands off about it. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm just hallucinating. This is a weird coincidence. YouTube recommends me this video. I've never looked for magic on YouTube. I don't know how this comes up. A few months later, it's 2019, October, and I love to read fiction. I'm a copywriter, but I hate reading just business books. So I read fiction to learn how to write effectively, write ways that people like to read.
Sure.
And so one of my favorite authors is Stephen King. And I'm like, I want to read a scary book for Halloween. And so I pick up The Stand, and I read The Stand, and it's all about a virus that escapes from a lab and wipes out 9/10 of the population. And 2 days after I get done reading The Stand, all the alternative YouTube people start talking about some virus that possibly leaked it. And I'm like, what the actual F is going on here? How did I just read this book? I'm freaking out about the concept of the book. And then 2 days later, it happens in reality. Like, what is going on? And then I went back to Seamus and I said, dude, something's crazy going on, and you've hinted at this, and I need to know. And he finally tells me, he's like, dude, I've been practicing magic since I was like 16 years old. And then I go to one of my other clients, and he's like, yeah, I'm a Kabbalist. I've been doing magic since probably my 30s. And then I go to one of my other clients, and he's a Indian from India. And he's like, yeah, you guys call it magic, but we just call it reality. And all of a sudden, like, almost everybody that I've been working with, these high performance coaches, these multi-millionaire business owners, as soon as I start being like, dude, this weird stuff's going on and I can't figure it out, they're all every single one of them. Yeah, bro, this is real. Like, we don't talk about it, but yeah, your brain, your mind, your attention creates reality. And we all know this. And that was like one of those, holy crap, all the Illuminati conspiracy theories are real, and I've just been living in denial this whole time.
Right. They just all start coming out of the broom closet. That's awesome. Oh man. Yeah, it's fascinating because it doesn't matter. It's almost in any direction. It's a lot of the same stuff. Like there's a lot of great, just simple self-help books that I've read. I liked a lot of the old stuff, like early 1900s stuff around the time of the Kabbalion. But even some modern stuff, like there's one called The Instant Millionaire that I read not too long ago. And I'll just read tons and tons of these books or listen to them. I prefer to listen as if I'm driving, but it's a lot of those same principles. And I think not talking about stuff, I've seen a difference. It's almost like I had something going, and then as soon as I started talking about it, Oh man, it definitely, the trajectory changed as soon as I started talking about it. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think if you can be trusted to kind of keep a universal secret, it's like I was raised in a Christian household too. So a lot of those like biblical sayings, they just stuck with me, like being faithful in little, and that transfers to being faithful in much. And that's just a proverb anyway. But I definitely see that as a smart thing to do. It is very wise to kind of guard your projects, and nurture them, so that they're not, affected by outside influence.
Yeah. And I think the way that the best that I can guess the way that it works is I think of like the lottery. If it's you and two other people that go play the lottery, and you are confident that you're going to win, and they both are confident that they're going to lose, reality is going to shift to you winning. But if there's a million other people out there and they all believe that they're going to win as well, then reality has a bunch of different ways that it gets to go. And I'm pretty certain that intention and belief direct reality. And the more people that intend, the more people that believe something, the more likely that is to become a reality. And that's why I'm very careful about when I'm planning stuff. I don't, if I will share stuff with certain people. I have a mastermind group, I have a couple mentors, but I won't share my stuff with people I know are going to cast out. I won't share my stuff with people I know who will say, well, I'm going to pray for you that you don't go to hell because of your wicked magic beliefs.
Right.
I'm very careful with who I share stuff with. But yes, there's absolutely one of the things that I'm 100% certain of: intention, belief, assumption. All of these things influence reality. And when a bunch of people have conflicting assumptions, the probabilities become less certain. But when you've got a dead on, this is what's going to happen, and I'm certain of it, and if you are persuasive and you can convince more people of it, it's what happens. And I think that that's one of the secrets that the people that run the news, no, I'm not talking about the Jews, just in general, the people that run the media, I know, and I've worked in media since like 2009. So going on almost 15 years now. A lot of people in media understand this principle, and they use it to get as many people bought into a predicted reality as possible. And they know that outcome usually ends up happening.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I can see why it's such a powerful weapon, right? And that's one of the things that I've kind of noticed recently, where it's like there's just death cults in every direction, right? It's like, oh, here, there's the end of the world in this mythology, the end of the world in this mythology. Oh, we got to build a new earth, but we have to destroy the old earth, or like whatever, in every direction. And it's like, wait a second, what about reason and rationale? What if there doesn't have to, wait for it, there doesn't have to be an end of the world scenario. But if you can get everybody bought into that reality, then it is definitely certain. I mean, and how many generations of programming will it take, I guess, until it finally just...
Well, and I think they're trying to put the genie back in the bottle with this one, but I don't think it's going to happen. The internet and meme magic. Memes have become their own form of magic. And we've seen people meme others into presidential offices. We've seen people meme. I think a lot of why a lot of people snapped out of the spell of coronavirus, I think a lot of the reason why people started snapping out of it is because as much programming was going on in the mainstream media, there was just as much counter programming going on by meme makers. And the internet, the ability that we all have our chance to have a voice now, and the fact that memes can bring down multi-billion-dollar propaganda machines. For me, it's a pretty hopeful time to be alive.
I think it's a beautiful thing. And I've only really recently learned this just through my own development and learning comedy. But joke writing, and that's kind of what memes are, really. I mean, it's a cartoon, so you got two layers, but it's joke writing. And so the ancient Greeks studied that because they knew they could destroy people's arguments if they just put together a salty little zinger, and then all of a sudden, even if is a fallacious argument, your argument is destroyed. And I've seen it happen in clubs, and I've seen it happen, in friend groups, and you name it. But there's so much. You're right. There's so much power. It's the most subversive art form, I think, just as a result of that. Right? Like it's a very powerful and effective weapon. I think that's true, because a lot of people were already talking about this kind of next go round happening or whatever this fall, and I think that's kind of been beaten back, and people are just like, no, we're not having it. And thankfully so, because I was actually quite surprised at the amount of compliance the first go round.
Yeah.
I was really shocked. Actually.
Yeah, I was too, but it was a testament to how powerful the media still is. But I will say that when they started saying, oh, it's coming back, I started seeing all kinds of memes about, I won't comply this time. And then memes about, wait, you guys complied the first time?
Right.
And I'll say this. So I caught the flu last week, had a major coughing attack, and strained a muscle in my chest right here, had some major inflammation going on. And last night I was thinking I was either having a blood clot or a heart attack or something. Ended up driving myself to the hospital, checked into the emergency room. And even in the middle of still all the hyped up, I mean, they're definitely trying to hype it back up again. There was a nurse and another nurse, and they were wearing masks. And everybody else was not wearing a mask. And I even heard two doctors talking outside, or a doctor and a nurse talking outside of my room. And the nurse was talking wearing the mask. And the doctor told him, dude, take the mask down when you're talking to me. And I was just like, what the F is going on? Like, reality is shifting. So, man, attention, belief, it's so much more than just impacting your actions. I 100% believe it impacts the world that we live in.
Yeah, it is a consensus reality, right? Like, it's an exercise in that, perceiving that and seeing that for what it is, because it is always changing. It's always shifting based on, like you're saying, that intention, right? And I think for us, I don't know, like, I don't want to say anybody's different than anybody else, because it's not that way. But I do see through some, I feel like I see through some bullshit, It's like, if I can be more certain in a situation, I think that is, what's the best, that rubs off on other people. It's kind of, I don't know, contagious is the best word to use, but like, just that certainty where it calms people down, they're frenetic or they're freaking out because of this. And it's like, if one person just calms down and has some centered energy, then all of a sudden things aren't quite as hysterical. Mm-hmm. Those little things like that intention, so go ahead.
There's experiments that they've done with resonance frequencies, where if they have a bunch of guitars in a showroom and they strum a single chord on a guitar, all of the other chords will start to resonate. All of the other strings that are of that same chord will start to vibrate and resonate at the same frequency. If you sing at certain octaves or certain frequencies and glass or crystal starts vibrating at that same frequency, you can pop it, you can break the glass. I am pretty certain that human beings work the same way. Somebody walks into a room and you don't even have to look at them. They can be behind you and they walk in a bad mood and you feel the energy shift. And I think that we all can be susceptible to it, but it's a power that we all have. We can decide when we walk into a meeting, place our intention before we walk in. What do I want out of this meeting? What do I want the energy to be like when I walk into the room? I'm bringing that in, and I'm going to overpower any energy that I don't want to vibe with when I walk into that room. We have that ability. It brings up, though, this whole discussion brings up something that I kind of struggle with. I go back and forth with, because I'm kind of like, man, all of this knowledge is out there. All of these, ways to look at the world are out there now. These books that have been kept secret and only talked about in secret societies are now available on Amazon. You can go check out podcasts like this one and find all this information that has been closely guarded secrets. And yet still a large percentage of the population would rather or are clueless to the fact that they're just the absorbers. They just absorb the energy and they go along with whoever's got the dominant energy, and they absorb whatever the mainstream media tells them, or they absorb whatever their pastor tells them, or they absorb whatever their friend groups tell them. And I sometimes wonder if it's just part of the human experience. There's supposed to be some leaders, and we evolved this way that the tribe, if we're out hunting and some storm clouds start gathering, if we're all arguing about what the storm clouds mean, we're going to go hungry and we might get caught up in a tornado. But if we've got one decisive guy that's like, dude, I've been on 50,000 hunts, I know exactly what that storm cloud means. It means we got 10 minutes to get the kill. We got to get that, and we got to get home before this tornado comes. And if we don't get it in 9 minutes, we need to get home, and we'll try again tomorrow. And everybody else has to just say, okay, we're going with what you say. We're going to follow your energy. Otherwise, that tribe goes extinct. If they don't have one or two solid leaders and a bunch of mindless followers, the tribe goes extinct. And so I think that that's something that's kind of built into our nature. And maybe when it comes to marketing or when it comes to philosophy, in my peer group, I'm the leader. But when it comes to what's wrong with my car, I'm definitely not the leader. I'm looking for somebody else to follow. And so maybe we trade roles back and forth, but it feels like this knowledge, this understanding of controlling your emotions, controlling your intentions, controlling your beliefs, and you can control reality. It feels like everybody does it, but not everybody is meant to consciously do it.
So I think so. Like it kind of makes me think of the whole like NPC thing. People talk about like people who are like non-participating characters, like having a video game that just runs a script or whatever. The way I view it is I can't buy into that. It's dehumanizing. But like I do think that I kind of was on that level. Like kind of maybe we all start out there where maybe our just awareness is we just don't. It's not all the map. The map changes. Our paradigm changes. We open up to new ideas. We find out about new things. And then all of a sudden, we can all of a sudden interpret more, I think. I think to a certain extent, groupthink and being able to cue off other people, that's a very helpful thing, right? Like I run off a cliff and then not to do that. So that's good. Like, yay. But at the same time, whenever we don't consciously think about it and just like yield over, maybe that's a bit of a problem there. Just like not even taking the time to assess, like, okay, well, we've seen this, we've seen that. Here's maybe how we should proceed, as opposed to just kind of trusting it. Because so the opposite of paranoia, I just learned this from Cheney's group. The opposite of paranoia is pronoia, and which is just as dangerous as paranoia, maybe even more, right? Because the pronoid would be the sheep that just trusts. Oh, this must be in my best interest. Mm-hmm. Oh, it must be good. So, because it's, being offered to me, and everyone's going to think about my best interest, which is a weird way to view the world, with so many other counter narratives kind of going on. The idea of overpopulation and population control and climate change and all those other things. It's like, it's just weird to be able to perceive both of those things in the same mind. But
the cognitive dissonance there, especially over the last couple of years, I have a lot of friends. I grew up a hardcore lefty, and until probably about 2014, when all the kind of woke stuff started creating, the authoritarian censorship and all that started creeping in, that was when I was like, maybe I'm not part of this herd. But I have a lot of friends that still are. And they'll go on about there's too many people on the planet and too much pollution and too many people driving cars and we need to reduce the population. And I said, yeah, I agree with you. And the ruling elite, they blatantly come out and admit that they agree with you. And all I'm saying is maybe they're doing something about, oh, that's ridiculous. And I was like, okay, I don't get how you can You can say, yes, you believe it. And you can say, yes, the people in charge believe it. And then when I suggest, well, maybe they're doing something about it, that's just the craziest idea ever.
Right. No, that's so funny. Yeah, I mean, I got a bit about it now where I just talk about like if we are doing the overpopulation thing, I think what we should do is just we should start with the billionaires and then maybe it'll just trickle down.
Whoa, 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 whoa. A lot of my friends are billionaires, so
Whoa.
chill out there.
There's only like 2,000 billionaires or so in the world, which is impressive. It's probably getting easier and easier to become a billionaire as the more inflation happens. That's another joke. Is like I'll be buying bread, but at least I'll be a millionaire. But
Okay.
like
I'm going to say one thing real quick to kind of circle back to where we started out in this conversation. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, Outwitting the Devil. Neville Goddard. I can't remember the name of the author of the book, As a Man Thinketh. David Allen, I think is his name. Tony Robbins, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. A lot of these very, very, very successful people that I studied because I've been a business owner since the late 90s. And that was kind of when I first started leaving my extreme communist beliefs. When I was on the other end of the tax bracket, I was like, oh, wait, I don't really like them taking my money and pay. But I will say I studied a lot of these guys, and I'm not going to name any names, but I've had backroom conversations with people who are very influential, very well known, and multimillionaires, billionaires, and they're 100%. They believe in magic. They don't say it out loud, but they're doing everything they can to wake people up. They're doing everything they can to empower people. And it seems like at the top, there's a divide. There's the people who say, look, we can teach people how to be in charge of their own lives, but most of them don't want to be free. Most of them don't want the responsibility. And like I said about the tribal thing, most of them are just born to be sheep. And we have to respect that. And if they're going to beg us to put them in chains, it's our job to put them in chains. And then there's the other people that are like, look, I figured out how to come from nothing, and I figured out how to use my mind to change my reality. And I want to teach as many people as possible about this. So at the top, I think that there's a lot of millionaires and billionaires that are doing everything they can to set the minds of humanity free. And there's a lot of them that are doing everything they can to keep us in control because we're hard to manage if we're a bunch of crazy cats.
Sure.
And somebody's trying to hurt us. Herd us. That's a tough job. And if half of the population is begging to be led and the other half of the population is like, nah, I'm not going to do what you tell me, that's a difficult position to be in. So there's at the top, the millionaires, the billionaires. I think that there's a divide. I think that there's a healthy split down the middle of those who want to set us free and or help us set ourselves free, and those who say, you know what, you don't want to be free, so I'm just going to go ahead and play the role of the dictator.
Well, I understand the argument. It is a good argument, honestly. And I can't categorize a group other than for dramatic effect, hyperbole, and humor. But but I think you're probably right. I think there are a lot of people, but you also hear the other side of that story, and I even experienced it where you try to help someone. And no matter what you do, like they just keep shooting you in the foot, over and over again. That's very frustrating. So I understand that argument. And then I understand the other two of, doing everything you can and coming from wherever it is, whether you've had help or not, you did it on your own, had a group, and generally, obviously we have to work together at some point, but however that whole thing comes about, I'm sure there are benevolent and more benevolent minded people that are in that mix. It's very curious, how this whole thing works, because there certainly is some overarching influence or some impetus that's pushing us in a certain direction, or seems to be. Vadim Zeland talks a lot about pendulums or energetic thought forms. I used to think, back in my super conspiratorial days, that it was almost like a lever, like this thing was being controlled but when I learned about energy and how it moves and collects and is formed, and how it's it's enhanced with negative and positive attention, well, that changed the game. I started to see, oh, okay, it's not like this. It's like, they're swinging a pendulum. There's a good analogy, but like the energy itself, moving in these different directions, and how these things happen. It's not that one person's necessarily steering this here to there, but it's its own idea carrying its own momentum, and that's the power. That's the power of magic, I think.
Well, that's a very key thing. I think that in our own individual lives, our mindset starts to collect and starts to build up a certain charge to it that starts to overpower our own actions. I think that also in business, a personal brand or a business brand is a lot of that. It's of paying somebody who's very good at creating. We call them thought forms or egregores, creating an energy around something and using that brand, using those icons, using the logos to evoke a type of feeling, to evoke a type of energy in people. And I don't think that everybody who's really good at it understands that that's what they're doing, but that's definitely what they're doing. And there's things like symbolism, symbols that have power, and we look at it, we get a bad feeling or we get a good feeling, and we don't even understand why, but everybody gets that same feeling. And there's cultures, there's buildings you can walk into and you don't even know why. You just get a creepy feeling, and then you find out, oh, 5 years ago a guy walked in here, murdered 8 people, and then shot himself. And for some reason, I just picked up on that when I walked in. Or, oh, for centuries, this place was used as a place to marry people and celebrate the best day of their lives. And when I walked into this little circle of stones, I immediately felt that. So yeah, there's something there. There's collective energy. There's ways to use that, and that's a big part of advertising, of marketing, of branding, is understanding how to use it. And like I said, most of the people that are really good at branding that I've met, they don't even know this. They just kind of unconsciously, competently understand it.
They just have like an intuitive ability to
Mhm.
that's interesting. Yeah, I was actually listening. I was driving on Saturday and I was listening to a football game on the radio, which I haven't done in a while. But I noticed that it's got so much more advertising and marketing in it now than it ever did when they get into like the Massey Ferguson red zone. You know what I'm saying? Like it's going to get, everything is going to be branded and part of the game. It's just being literally incorporated into the telling of the story, which
Well,
is
and sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead.
That's hijacking that energy. There's that. I mean, a football game is a massive amount of energy. It's people out on the field running and putting 100%, 110% of their energy into every play. There's the crowd going nuts. And then there's these really smart brands that have said, hey, there's a bunch of energy being collected here. I wonder if I can hijack some of that energy. I wonder if I can grab some of it and siphon it into our brand.
Yes.
And that's what's going on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's crazy to watch it, but yeah, I was kind of blown away because I used to listen to the radio football on the radio when I was a kid, so I can see the contrast. But how much they're doing, it's almost gonna get confusing if you take it to its logical conclusion. It's gonna be a hilarious soup of advertisements as you're watching the game, which will be a fun maybe a fun skit or something.
and that does end up happening. I see a lot of bad advertising, especially by people that don't understand what they're doing, and they just think, well, just slap our make the logo bigger, and that'll have a bigger impact. And yeah, like I said, I started out the show by saying I'm part of that evil marketing community. I understand why marketers get a bad rap. I agree with a lot of the negative conceptions about marketers. I do my best not to fall into those conceptions myself, but I get it. And yeah, sometimes it gets ridiculous.
Yeah, sometimes it does. And same. I mean, I don't think when Bill Hicks talked about, marketing and marketers, he ever envisioned a world like what we're living in now, where he would have, we all have the power to market for ourselves and to advocate for ourselves. That wasn't something that was on his radar, right? Like he wasn't around at that time. I love his points. Always beautiful. Like that guy's my spirit animal when it comes to
What did he say? If there's any marketers in the crowd, kill yourself.
I think that's what he said. Yeah.
But he also said, it's a ride. Don't get too crazy about life. It's just a dream. And you can step off of it at any time. And dude was deep. Dude was one of those guys that when I finally woke up to like some of the more esoteric things of reality, I was like, oh, Bill Hicks was one of the guys trying to tell me what was going on, and I just was too dumb to hear it.
Yeah, he always one of my favorites, but I didn't see that level, that depth, that all those layers until much later. I'm really grateful for it. But I think it's great that we have the ability to, like you and I can be here having this conversation. We can talk about the things that we're doing. We can poll our audience and I can say, hey, would you guys like this or that? Or do you want to chat on Wednesday? I mean, to be able to do that is amazing, really unheard of until the internet comes along. So it's a good, valuable tool. It's, I guess, on how we harness it and leverage it. I almost wish that I had more to offer before, when the internet was maybe a little bit more wide open, because it's changed so much and continues to change. It's like some of the things I'm trying to do, I have to learn new skills for, whether it's Facebook ads or Google LSA or whatever. And that's just the nature of doing anything, I've learned. But yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful for the ability to have it. It makes my life so much easier. The business that we run would not be nearly as easy. It would take so much more of my time if I wasn't able to use software and things like that.
I'm going to jump in real quick. One of my key rules for doing magic, I will not mess around with any kind of magic that forces somebody to do something against their will. I won't do any kind of like love spells. I won't do any kind of revenge spells. I just stay away from all of that kind of stuff. I'm 100% certain that it works, but I will not mess with that stuff. I won't violate. I won't trick somebody into doing something that goes against their own best interest. And I have that same rule when it comes to marketing. If I don't believe in the thing that the client is trying to sell, and if I don't believe it'll actually help the people they're trying to sell it to, I just won't work with them. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm at the point in my career where I have that luxury to just tell people no if I don't want to work with them. But in marketing, there's a lot of people who just don't care. They'll do anything they can to get the sale, and they don't care whether the person on the other end is actually in need of what they're selling. They'll do anything they can to get the money out of your pocket and into their pocket, and they don't care if you're hurt in the process. And I think that there's a lot of people in magic that are the same way. And I think that, I don't know if it's like a self-awareness type thing or if it's a moral type thing, but I have met people that are practicing magicians, and they are kind of the belief that they're the only ones that exist, that this whole thing is made up, and there's no moral rules and nothing is good or bad, and they can do whatever they want as long as they get their way. And so another overlap between magic and marketing is the type of person practicing it has a huge impact. And I think that we get this like image of the dark magician, and we get this image of the selfish, greedy marketer. And it's really easy to paint everybody. I mean, if you're a religious person, it's really easy to paint everybody who practices magic as a black magician, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a normie consumer, it's very easy to paint everybody who's good at marketing as being a sleazy salesperson. But it's been my experience that, again, it's about 50-50. I've met a lot of really awesome marketers who did everything they can to make sure that the person buying was best served. And I've met the opposite. And I've met a lot of magicians that are very in tune with, hey, I only do beneficial magic. Every time I do anything, it has to be for the good of everybody involved and bring curse to none. And then I've met other people that are like, well, nobody else is even real, so I'm just going to get whatever I want.
Right. Yeah. I've definitely experienced both of those too. And usually, I would say that whenever I've dealt with people who will do just whatever and don't really have any scruples, so to speak, it usually, it usually ends in bad advice from them. Like in general, it's usually not very, applicable or practical in the long run. It might be like a short win, but I don't think it's usually been, because it's like, oh, just DM everybody on your and try to get them on a sales call. It's like, bro, no, I'm not doing that. Like, you're insane.
Yeah, and in business, when you take that approach in business, you end up getting a bunch of chargebacks. You end up getting your accounts closed down. You end up getting a bunch, especially now with the internet. Tons of people go on Yelp and leave you a bad review, or they go to the forums and talk crap about how horrible you did them. So yeah, in the short run, it seems to work out for you, but in the long run, um, some people get away with it. I've actually known some marketers that just get away with being sleazy, and they just rip people off and rip people off, and they just keep getting away with it. And I think, like, you look at the political state of most countries and you're like, yeah, it seems like some really selfish people just keep getting away with it. But at the same time, back to the analogy of the tribe, a lot of people are just begging to be led around by the nostrils by really horrible people. So I don't know how much of it is them not getting their karma versus they're just fulfilling the role because so many people out there just want to be lied to and led around.
Yeah, and I think when you're swimming with sharks, you're in that environment that can't be very fun, because everyone else is, just as willing to do whatever it is. They're just as depraved. And ultimately, that's just fear. You're always looking over your shoulder. So now you're in this like paranoid state. So I don't think that's any way to live, like,
Yeah, definitely not an environment I think any sane person would even be attracted to in the first place.
right, right. But it is interesting, the overlap. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. It's like you said, that it comes to mind is the Aleister Crowley kind of approach, where it's like, do as thou wilt. Don't. And I don't know. I guess that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. I'm not an expert on Crowley. I know Robert Anton Wilson's stuff. Tremendous amount of his stuff I've pilfered, and he has a lot of respect for Crowley's work, which it's so confusing to me. A lot of it is just so esoteric, even for me.
Yeah.
I had a hard time working through it, but but there
Yeah,
are.
I'm not a big fan of Crawley, but I'm not a big hater on him either. I'm 50-50 with him. I kind of interpret do as thou will for myself. I'm like, hey, I was put here for a reason. That is what my will is, the connection with my true self. I have a purpose here. I came here for a reason. Just to kind of get into the philosophy of what I kind of believe about this, I feel like this is maybe like a video game, or uh, a grand consciousness created this so that it could experience things. And part of what I'm here to do is to do what I'm doing. And whether that's play the video game, come from a kid that grew up homeless on welfare to being a successful business owner that helps other successful business owners. Like, it's been a pretty crazy journey. I mean, for people that aren't watching, I'm covered in tattoos. Even my face is covered in tattoos. Yet I work with multimillionaires and they trust me with running ad campaigns and running their marketing. And to come from where I came from to where I got, and having Magick be a huge part of the turnaround in my life, where I was struggling. And now I still struggle sometimes, but man, it feels like I like to think of it. This is a journey, and you can choose to travel business class, or you can choose to travel coach, or you can choose to travel first class. And I made the decision to start traveling first class. And I think that that's part of I'm here to do what I can do. I'm here to experience things, whether that's just I'm just a microcosm of the greater consciousness and I'm supposed to experience these things, or maybe it's a game and I'm playing it, and this is the design that I set out for myself before I turned the game on. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not very sold on any one particular point of view, but I do think that we're here for a reason, all of us, and I do think that the experience and the things that we go through and the way that we decide to play the game, um, there's purpose behind it. And I don't think for most of my life, I didn't have that point of view, but I do have that point of view now, and it's a much more empowering way to live my life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I still have, you know, struggles and rough days and stuff, but because of that, because I do kind of dig into that idea of purpose, that will keep me going even when I do want to give up. Because doing anything that's it's I don't know, doing anything is usually harder than than I set out, that I thought it would be when I set out. So I usually wind up getting a lot more resistance than expected. The Dunning-Kruger effect is very real. I've observed it quite a few times, but I agree with you. I think there is a differentiation, like with I think Mark Passio maybe was the one who pointed this out, but the big W will and the lowercase will. Like the lowercase will is like your, you know, very lowest self nature kind of will, what you want, pleasure, that type of thing. But that higher will is that capitalized W, where it's an alignment. And I do think, and this is something that Transurfing talks about too, it puts it in a very simple way. And I think a lot of the esoteric stuff is saying exactly the same thing, is that your heart and your mind should agree. And it's like, it seems like a very simple concept, but it's not something that I even realized was possible in my life until a certain point. So when those things do happen and you can have some alignment, like so many more options, ideas, possibilities, attitude opens up. And yeah, there's definitely always challenges, but for me, being able to have that sense of purpose and understand, even at a abstract level, what that is, it doesn't have to be super specific. I'd like to differentiate a lot of times between what your function or your role is versus what your purpose is, because the purpose can be like very abstract. I'm taking a class right now where the guy is talking about how he learned the skills that he learned and how their teacher taught him, oh, well, you know, this has got to be like a lasagna. It's got to be flavorful and robust and cheesy. And it's got to have the perfect crust. He's not telling him any ingredients, though. You know, he's just telling him what the essence of that thing is. And I think as far as what your purpose is, it can be like that, right? Like it can be this kind of thing. It doesn't have to be this one job or, you know, this ego identified role. You know, I got into it one time with my boss years ago when I was working in college. I was a cook, and, you know, my boss at the time was just freaking out about a sandwich that was 15 minutes or something and was supposed to be, you know, out in 10. And he picked the thing up and just started yelling. And he threw it across the room, and I just was like, it's a goddamn sandwich, Bill, you know, like chill the fuck out, bro. You know, like it's going to be okay. It's a sandwich. Yeah. But it's so easy to get, to get caught up in all of that. But yeah, I think when we really take a look at who we are at an essence sort of level, and we can kind of define that as opposed to a role, like I'm cooking a sandwich or I'm a waiter or I'm a moving company, whatever that is, that doesn't matter, because you can bring your purpose into whatever that container is. Like for me, my purpose is to bring people joy. It's very simple. And I forget sometimes, and I totally do, and I get moody. I'm a very moody person, but I forget that shit. And so I have to try to remember, but I can do that anywhere. I can do that if I'm at Sam's, you know, and I'm just walking into the greeter, you know, I can bring a little bit of joy into the world. And I don't know, just one day it just kind of, it just struck me. It was like, maybe somebody cut me off even, and I was in traffic, and I was like, well, I have a choice right now, what I bring into the world. I don't know how much it's going to affect the world. Maybe just this little teeny tiny bit, but I do have a choice now of whether I'm cursing the world and this person, or if I'm just going to let it go and just bring in something different. I do think once we start, to your point about the strings vibrating, and that happening. Like once we can tap into that, whatever that emotion or vibration is, then we're kind of like little amplifiers ourselves, just, giving more and more of that off. So digging down into that idea, whatever that purpose is, it doesn't matter. Like people call your reason why, whatever it is that can like bring you back to center, then that's, use that and try and dig down into that, because it's so helpful. I mean, the idea of magic is really, I think it's mentality. It's bringing what you want into the world, and defining that as ideally a win-win. Like outer intention is what they call it in transurfing. If you're in a Pentecostal church, it's when God, like when God does X, Y, or Z. But yeah, trying to like lean into that, I've found having just a sense and an idea of that purpose at my core. Like even if let's say that you're an atheist and you don't believe in anything spiritual, you could still have a statement, a purpose statement, a mission statement sort of thing for your life, if it's your family or whatever it is, and still kind of have that as a fundamental building block of to kind of keep you centered and grounded in your day to day.
I have not read Reality Transurfing yet. I heard it's a great book. I haven't got my hands on a copy of it yet. It's like my next 3 or 4 books that I'm looking forward to digging into. But I do kind of feel like I'm just going to jump back real quick. I'm doing a lot of jumping back in this episode.
I like it. It's good.
My long-term mentor, a guy that I've been working with for, probably 5-6 years now. He has this practice that we do. And this was before I even believed in magic. And then after I started being like, yo, what the heck's going on? And this was one of the reasons why I started pestering him and being like, yo, okay, what's up? You're not telling me everything that there is to know here. He has this practice, and this has happened so many freaking times that it just blows my mind, where we'll be on a call. Every week we do a 1-hour call, and every 6 months or so, we'll take a break from the normal thing that we're doing. And we just go through, and he says, okay, I want you to open up a notepad or open up a notebook, and I want you to write down exactly what kind of client you want. What do they sell? Where are they at? What kind of stuff do they do? And the first time that he did this, and it just rocked my world, I had just turned down a job in Baltimore. It was 6-figure sign-on. Just the sign-on bonus was 6 figures. And then it was an additional 6 or 7 figures per year. And I went out to Baltimore, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to live here. I don't care how much money you pay me. I'm going to turn this job down. But it was a huge opportunity. And he was like, why didn't you take it? And I was like, part of it was, I don't want to raise my daughter out there. I don't want to have conflict with her mom. This would not be a good situation. Doesn't matter how much money it would end up resulting in. It just wasn't worth it. No amount of money in the world was worth what I'd have to give up to go work out there. And he goes, okay, well, what do you want? And I said, I want to work with selling stuff that I love, selling stuff that I believe in. I want to work here in Colorado with local people, and I want this much money at least per month to be able to have people have access to me. And he goes, well, write it down then. And so I wrote down exactly, it's got to be something that I love selling. It's got to be somebody who's willing to pay me this much. And it's got to be somebody here in Colorado. Later that afternoon, I get a call from a guy, and he's like, hey, I need you to talk to somebody. He's an art gallery owner, and he sells a lot of like psychedelic artwork. I think you'd be great to work with him. And I said, I don't know if I could do that. I'm not looking. I asked him, because the guy that hit me up, he lives out on the East Coast. And so I'm assuming it's an East Coast job. And I'm like, dude, I'm not really feeling moving, but I'm like, I'll entertain it. So we talk to the guy, we get through the conversation. The money's right. The stuff that he sells, I'm like, dude, I would love to sell this stuff. And I tell him, unfortunately, dude, I can't leave Colorado. I can't do it. I'm stuck here. My daughter's here, her mom's here, my life is here. I don't want to leave Colorado. He goes, dude, we're in Denver. I was like, you're 40 miles away from me. Everything that I wrote down just that morning, and when I said this is my ideal client, and so we had a 6-month. I went in, I set up a bunch of stuff in their business. I got paid like immensely well for it, and it was one of my favorite clients that I've ever had. And it was just so weird. And it's not the only time. There's been 3 times now where we've done this exercise. I get super clear on who I want to work with. And then either later that day, a day or 2 later, or a week later, exactly what I said I want ends up falling in my lap. And I don't do any rituals. I don't burn any effigies. I don't sacrifice a goat. I don't dress up in a robe. I just focus on getting real clear on what I want, and bam, it happens. And the opposite happens a lot too. I get real clear on something that I don't want, and I focus on, dude, I hope this doesn't happen. Dude, I hope this does. Bam, it happens. And so I think that I know for myself, I go through life creating reality all the time. I'm making good stuff happen, making bad stuff happen purely on my belief and intention. And I like I said at the beginning of the show, I watch everybody do it. Everybody is practicing magic all of the time. Some of us consciously do it, and some of us get really good at it. And some of us never realize that it's what we're doing. And sadly, that's the case. But I don't spend very much time. I'm not the guy that's trying to that figured it out and is trying to wake everybody up. I don't feel like that's my role. I feel like my role is, hey, if you've kind of picked up on what's going on, I'd love to show you more, but I'm not here to convince you anything.
Yeah.
If you think I'm crazy for saying the stuff I say, that's fine. That's cool. We don't have to agree. I'm not going to convince you. But if you've started noticing the synchronicities and you want to know more about how to cause the synchronicities rather than just be an observer of them, let's talk. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
That's great. No, dude, it's funny you haven't read that book because you summed up a lot of ideas in it. Like one of the things he says in there is like, we always get what we don't want. He definitely highlights the other side of that, like law of attraction, that everybody just, hypes up this idea of, just think about what you want. You just put it on your vision board and then you'll have it. But what he says is that magnetic attraction happens because our heart and mind agree. And it's so easy for our heart and mind to agree on what we don't want. Mm-hmm. Like that's the first thing that we can think about usually if we're honest with ourselves, Well, I think that's a great exercise to do too. Ask yourself and write that shit down.
Yeah. And the thing is most people are very clear on what they don't want. I don't want to get my heart broke again. I don't want to go to work and hate my job. I don't want to fight with my wife again tonight. We're very clear on what we don't want, but we don't spend much time getting clear on what we do want. And so our compass is directed at the thing that we're clear on, and we just keep getting more of it. And that's why I say we're all practicing magic. Most of us just don't realize it and don't want to admit to ourselves that that's what we're doing.
No, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And as Jamie said, all the world is an altar. It's like you are the ritual. That's why you don't have to do. I mean, you can do whatever you want. There's nothing wrong with that. Lots of chaos magicians out there who put sigils all over the place or do whatever they do. But but the whole idea is that we are the ritual. Like we are that masculine and feminine that creates that makes that thing. That's how creation is. It's our heart, that feminine chalice, and then the masculine conscious mind. And we need both of those elements in order to ever create anything. So when we bring those two things together, that's what creation is. So that's what we're doing all the time. And like you said, people are practicing magic. They're not even realizing that they're doing it. But manifestation is so innate. It's just our natural, it's our natural ability. And I think the more people realize that, the easier it gets too.
Okay. So you mentioned sigil magic, and I have to tell you a story. So my very first time actually intentionally doing magic. this was probably about a year after we were into the lockdowns and Corona and all the blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And I'm questioning reality. I'm like, how did I read this book and then this happens? And then immediately after that, I read Atlas Shrugged, and then the World Economic Forum starts talking about all this. I'm like, this is like exactly what they were talking about. This is maybe just a coincidence, but then I started having all these synchronicities again, where for years I didn't have the telephone telepathy. I didn't have the something's going to happen and then it happens. And then all of a sudden it just started happening again. I had all these weird instances where I'd be in the supermarket and I'd be thinking of a song and somebody'd walk by me and start singing the song. And I was like, what the funny button is going on here? And then I picked up a client and he has epilepsy. He has a mild form of epilepsy, but he has some pretty severe seizures sometimes. And he tells me, dude, sometimes I have seizures and I get disconnected from reality. And when I come back, it doesn't feel real for a long time. Yeah. And then he's like, he's real careful about it. But he's like, dude, I have these weird synchronicities all the time. One of my buddies who I haven't talked to in 15 years, I was thinking about him yesterday and he called me today and it was so weird. And so I'm like, yeah, coincidences, synchronicities, whatever. And then eventually Seamus, one of my mentors, is like, yeah, dude, I've been doing magic since I was like 15, 16 years old. And I totally believe in it. And I attribute a lot of my success in life to my belief in magic. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And so I start exploring things and I start looking at different philosophies. And I'm like, oh, there's this type of magic. And maybe it's animism. Maybe everything's spirits. Maybe we live in a simulation. Maybe everything is just inside of my mind. And this whole thing is just a dream. I'm not sure what's going on. And I make the decision I'm going to actually try some magic. And I just started working with this guy, the synchronicity guy. And I'd been working with him about 2 or 3 weeks. And I sit down and I say, I'm going to make a sigil. So I look on YouTube, how to make a sigil. Okay, so you write out your intention. You make sure that you're very clear on it, that it can't hurt anybody, that there's no unintended consequences possible. You spell it out. You strike out all the vowels. You strike out all the repeating letters. You turn that into some sort of logo. And then you sit there and charge it with that intent. And so I'm sitting, this is my first time ever doing this. I still don't believe in it. And I'm sitting there with the candle lit and I'm staring at this sigil and I do it for about 5 or 10 minutes. And the point was, hey, I want to make sure that me and this guy have a healthy relationship. We're both super profitable working together. And I really like this guy's business. I want to have a long-term financial relationship with him. And I'm focusing on this, like putting all of that intent, a long-term relationship where we both make a lot of money together, selling things to people that their lives are benefited by buying. Long-term relationship where we both make a lot of money together, selling things to people that their lives are benefited by buying. A long-term, and I just repeat that over and over for about 15 minutes. And then I start feeling silly. I'm like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like, this is by far the dumbest, craziest, insanest thing that you've ever done. And I start getting really self-conscious about it. So I take it and I fold it in half and I go outside and it's a full moon and I light it on fire and I release it into the atmosphere or whatever the YouTube video told me to do. And I'm so embarrassed about it, I wipe it out of my memory. I'm like, I'm never thinking about that again. Perfect. I'm never going to admit that I did this. Nobody's ever going to know about this. We're at work the very next day. I'm at his office. I'm sitting in the office with the guy that runs all the tech. And the client comes running. His name's Scott. He comes running in. He's like, stop what you're doing. Something's broken on the store. And Jeff, the other guy's like, what's going on? What's wrong? He's like, I don't know. Something's broken. We're getting messed up reporting. I don't know what's going on. Open it up. Figure out what's wrong. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. And Jeff opens it up. He's like, this is great. What are you talking about? He's like, we're having like double and triple reporting or something because it's 11 o'clock and we've had more sales today than we've ever had in a single day since the beginning of the store.
Oh my God.
And Jeff is like, I mean, this is crazy. There's a huge spike today. but there's nothing wrong. All of these are legitimate sales. And he goes, there's no way. It's not even noon. And this is the biggest day we've ever had in sales. And it's not even lunchtime yet. There's something wrong. Jeff spends about 45 minutes going through, checking everything, and everything was a legitimate sale. And it ended up, to this day, it's still the busiest day we've ever had. And I'm still working with the client. This is 2 years now we've been working together. And it was right off the bat, like a great thing. And we just started an ad campaign, an email sequence. And I don't even think the email sequence really brought in that many sales, but for some reason, the store just got flooded with sales. And right when he walks in and says that, my jaw hits the ground and I'm like, holy crap, what the F is going on? And it freaked me out. And I was afraid. I didn't touch Magick again for like 4 or 5 months after that.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I can, I feel like Mickey Mouse in The Wizard's Apprentice. Like, I don't know if I want to get flooded with all of this water from these brooms because I lose control. And I was terrified for 3 or 4 months to ever even think about Magick again. But it was the thing that, like, okay, this isn't just coincidences. This isn't just me going crazy. There's something to putting my intent, clearly stating what I want to happen, and having it happen. And since then, I started dabbling around with it again. I started working with Seamus, and over and over and over, and sometimes bad, sometimes a couple of weeks back, we were going to drive up to Denver to a Jim's show. And I told my daughter's mom, I was like, well, let me go check my tire pressure first. It got cold. And I always try to check my tire pressure. I don't want a tire to blow out. She's like, don't worry about it. We'll just take my car. We'll be fine. Cause I was really worried about blowing a tire on the highway. We get halfway to Denver and one of her tires blows out. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And she looks at me and she's like, that's what you were worried about this morning. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't. So for good or for bad, intention and belief creates reality. And I'm 100% sold on it.
I am too. Yeah. Just all the different, it's like emotional contracts almost that we are engaging with the universe. These like unspoken contracts. And one of the things that he talks about in that book is this idea of importance. And this is something that gets in my way. And it's been a very difficult barrier for me to kind of get over, because he says, like, a lot of the times that we don't get that thing that which we want is because we didn't let go. So the way that you let go of that sigil, you were like, well, that was crazy. Like, whatever. That's perfect. You don't have any resistance to the thing because it's all just lost. It's like the more that you can kind of forget about it and just put it in the back seat, the more likely it is. You want to take a lot of action, of course, but you don't want to get hung up on results, you know. And I think one thing too that has helped me is it being very specific and clear on what that goal is, like very, very specific. So instead of it being like some sort of, if I can make it less outcome based as far as like, oh, I got an award or some shit, and more like skill based, or like even relationship based, or you know, some sort of a position or situation to be in, as opposed to you know, specific outcome about, oh, I'm going to get this X, Y, or Z thing. To me, that's just a better way to proceed, because to me it's more I don't know what the right word is. It's more rewarding for me because I can see the benefit of it. It's less of a I think it kind of gets rid of some of the vanity of the goal, maybe, at least from my perspective. So being just really, really, really specific about that and what it is that you want, because they don't say be careful what you wish for no reason. They don't, that's a real thing. But yeah, specificity.
I think also just kind of letting go and trusting that if this is what I feel is meant to happen, it's going to happen some way or another. And I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to let the universe figure out how to make, or I'm going to let the grand consciousness, the grand architect, whatever it is that's building all of this. Maybe it's just my subconscious mind. I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
not going to force it. I'm just going to say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I think would be awesome. This is what I want more of. And I'm just going to assume that it's going to happen. And I'm going to let the universe figure it out. I'm going to let my subconscious mind figure it out. And the more I'm forcing it with my conscious mind, the more I'm forcing it with, oh, I have to do this next. And I have to send these emails and I have to do this. And I have to, and instead of just being like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and set these campaigns to live and see which one performs. And oh wow, it was that one. I totally wouldn't have guessed that that was the one that was going to convert so well. But just saying, hey, you figure it out. I trust whatever this is that created all of this around me. It created the entire universe. Of course it can create an experience that I want to have in my life. Why would I not believe that it could create that for me? So I'm just going to go ahead and let it go. And you know what my intent is. You know what I would love to experience. And I'm going to go ahead and let you figure out how to make that happen. And that's when it works the best.
I think so too. I think that's beautiful too. I think that's when you walk into these like blessings from the universe that you didn't even know, you couldn't even conceive of, and you're like, oh damn, like it's like a surprise party, you know.
Mhm.
You walk into something that you would have like the shirt that I'm wearing now is like 6-man. I didn't even know it was possible. I got to work on all these cruise ships as a host and MC and stuff. Like,
Oh, nice.
was performing with, yeah. I did a guitar pick throwing contest with Gene Simmons. You know, I did, you know, like I get to meet like so many different amazing people, and like, how did that even happen? I wouldn't have even known that it was possible, right? Just on a whim, sent a video message to a friend of mine, just goofing around, and then all of a sudden I found myself on a cruise ship for, you know, a couple of months or whatever it was, working in an industry that I'd been trying to break into. So it's like things like you can't even fathom that once you give up and not give up, but let that thing go and let the universe do what it does, that like things will start to come to you. That was a big hang up for me. Like a big sticking point for me is like trying to figure out how it's going to happen and trying to like kind of micromanage that. Like thinking, oh, well, if I send this email to so-and-so, then they'll talk to this guy over here or whomever. And then, you know, and it's like, nope, don't do that. Get rid of all of that. And then whenever you talk to people, you don't have those weird expectations on them and stuff.
Yeah. You know, I want to cover this before we're out of here. Like I said, I didn't even take Magick serious until right after Corona started. And I was like, this is really weird. I can't believe I just read a book about this crazy, absurd, one in a billion possibility of something crazy like what happened in this book happening. And as soon as I'm done reading it, it happens. Like, what the F?
Yeah.
Before that, I never, even with my weird deja vu stuff, I never would have taken Magick seriously. But I had started a business in 1999. Me and my brother started a record label. Since then, I started 2 software companies. I started a t-shirt apparel company. And that whole time I'm reading all of these success books, Think and Grow Rich, The Millionaire Mindset. And one thing that keeps coming up over and over again is express gratitude. Have gratitude for for every single day. Go back at the end of the day and think about every little miracle that you had happen. And then throughout the next day, look for those little miracles and expect the best. And, stop looking at successful people and hating them. Stop wanting to screw over the millionaires and the billionaires. All of these like little things that were once I started looking into Magick, I was like, holy crap, all of these success principles from Tony Robbins to Robert Kiyosaki to Napoleon Hill to gosh, I can't remember his name, the guy that wrote As a Man Thinketh,
James
uh,
Allen.
James Allen. Yeah. All of these success principles, they're magic principles. They're ways to trick your subconscious mind into manipulating reality into what you want it to be. And none of them ever come out and say it. But and then I start reading actual magical philosophy from Freemasons and from ancient Egyptians and ancient Greek philosophy. And I start reading all of these foundational magical principles, and it's the exact same thing. And so when I first started playing around with it, it just came really easy to me. I hear people say that they struggle with it and they try it and they never get success, but I feel like because I had spent 10 plus years establishing these mindsets, establishing these belief systems through business, as soon as I tried magic, I hit the ground running, and I just 100 miles per hour. And I think that that's one of the things that I'm most grateful for, is that I had that solid foundation of a positive mindset, of a gratitude, a spirit of gratitude, of a spirit of wanting to give rather than take. A core business belief for me is it's a win-win situation. It's not me
Yes.
taking your money. It's me giving you value, and then you appreciating what I give you so much that you want to give me value back. A lot of these business principles, I fear that if I didn't have them in place when I started studying Magick, I probably would have had it all blow up in my face. But I had done a lot of internal work that was based off of magical philosophy without even realizing it for 10 plus years before I even ever tried anything ritualistic. And then when I started trying some of the ritualistic stuff, it just started working within 24 hours, within 15 minutes. Bam, exactly what I asked for just drops in my lap. And I don't hear that that happens very much for people. People tell me, and sometimes it's years later. And I'm like, dude, when I try to manifest stuff, I usually get it the same day. I don't know about this years later stuff, but I think that I'm very grateful for the fact that I went through a lot of those lessons as a business owner, as a marketer, and developed those core parts of my being before I ever tried messing with magic. And I would say that if you're listening to this and you want to start working with magic, I think one of the most important things that you can do first is do that inner work, do that practices of gratitude, practices of self-worth, practices of knowing that you're giving and that you deserve to receive, because I don't think that it'll work well unless you have that foundation.
Man, that's really, really good. Yeah, really good. Kevin says, gratitude grounds you better than gravity.
Mhm.
Definitely agree. I maybe people have done it, but I bet it'd be really hard to complain your way to the top. I don't know. That'd be impressive. I've never most of the
Social justice warriors, bro.
right. Most of the people that I know that are like super very well to do, they may be facing tremendous challenges in their life. But when I see them, they always have something positive to say, a joke, something uplifting. They're always just giving good energy out there. They may be having radiation that morning, but they come and they have a positive thing. And I see that a lot. I see that very often, enough to take notice. And yeah, that's an incredibly important building block, the gratitude.
That's one of those other things. Very early on, when I became a business owner, I was reading a business book, and the author says, just try to go a week without complaining. First, start with a day, then do day number 2, and go a whole week without complaining, and watch how the world changes. And that was one of those things that I did it, and I was like, holy cow, like just not complaining changes everything. And then when I got into magic, that was one of those, dude, be careful what you give your attention to. Don't give your attention to the things that make you want to complain. Otherwise, you're going to get more of those. And it was just like, oh, this is like not just a business or self-development. This is a core fundamental magical principle. And there's so much overlap between success in business and success in magic.
Yeah, well, yeah, the mindset aspect of it alone. I remember, so I worked a lot in production, and a lot of the people that I work with might not be the best at their job, but they were fun to be around, so they kept getting hired. Like they were always positive, and that rubs off just from a simple, practical mentality aspect of nothing else. Just being in a good enough mentality to be around, where people want to be around you, and you have something positive to bring, that can change just your outlook when you, like you're saying, like stopping to complain, but just it's so practical and so simple. I wanted to be like, oh, it doesn't matter, but it's like, you can pick it up just like that if someone's got their attitudes in the gutter. And the last thing you're going to do is attract someone to you. If your eyes are looking down, they're not even going to make eye contact with you. So it's so simple, but it's so profound, just to bring that up. The way that he says it in that, not to go back to that Transurfing book a million times, but the way that he says it in that book is that my world, I take care of my world takes care of me, my world and I go for a walk. It's all the same stuff. The principles are the same in all these different books. It's just, people find different words to use to express the ideas. But
yeah, we're all climbing the same mountain. We're just taking different paths to get there.
I love that. Yeah, I love that too. And it's tough when you're blazing a trail. I think people give yourself some credit, give yourself some time too. One of the things that's always been challenging for me is patience. It's like, I want the thing, I want it now. And depending on what that thing is, it takes time, and things happen in the time that it needs to take. The book that he wrote after Reality Transurfing is also very, very good. It's called Tufti the Priestess, Tufti. And that one's a much shorter read. It's a little bit more advanced from like that standpoint. But what she's saying in that book, and it's supposedly like a channeled book from this goddess, like this BDSM type of goddess. She's like, you're all snails. You don't, you're so binary. You see this thing happen, it's good. And then this thing happens and it's bad. And she's like, but you can't see the full landscape. If you were up here, you would see that everything that's happening is for your good. So, keeping that in mind, it's hard sometimes to get lost and forget. But like, back to your point, letting go and trusting, like, I don't need to know how all this whole thing works out. I'm just going to put the effort in and leave it at that.
Well, somebody loses $10 and somebody else finds it. The lost $10 is really bad to the person who lost it. The lost $10 is really great for the person who, so the $10 changed hands, and it was good from one perspective. It was bad from another. So right there, was it good or was it bad? But I've had plenty of experiences go through a bad breakup. I loved this girl. She was perfect. She was everything I wanted. And for 3 or 4 months afterwards, I was just crushed. And then a year later, I look back on it and I'm like, that wasn't very healthy. And these things that should have been a red flag. I should have saw that. And you know what? If I would have stayed with her, I wouldn't have been able to take advantage of this opportunity. And this other thing that happened in my life wouldn't have happened. So this thing that was the worst thing ever at one point in my life is actually a really good thing and a really healthy thing for me at a different point in my life. And I'm the same person. It was the same experience, but the way that I'm looking at it and the knowledge, the lens that I'm looking at it through gives it the quality of good or bad. And that right there is like a powerful thing when you realize I get to choose whether this was good or bad. I get to choose how I look at this. I get to choose what filters, what glasses I'm going to put on to look at this with. And it happened, and I get to choose whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And that's not always easy, especially right in the middle of it. But once you realize that you have that power, again, that's another thing where you're just like, whoa, I have like control over reality here. We have so much more power than we're taught to believe. And you start unraveling the rabbit hole and you're like, whoa, like this experience that I'm having is grand beyond my wildest dreams, and I'm going to stop living it so mundane. I'm going to start appreciating and living it to the max. And you make that mindset shift and everything changes for you.
Man, that's so good. Yeah, absolutely. So such an inspiring little riff there. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed getting to meet you. We've never met before, but I've seen all your stuff so many times, and I've seen some of your videos, and I love the stuff that you post on Facebook. So I'm glad. Thanks for coming out on a limb and just hopping into it, right into the soup with me, dude. I appreciate it.
Oh man, absolutely. When you reached out to me almost a month ago, you said, "Hey, would you want to come on?" I was like, "Heck yeah, I want to come on. What are you talking about?" So thank you for inviting me. Do you mind if I be a sleazy marketer at the end of the show and plug a couple things?
No, dude, nothing sleazy about it. I want to encourage everybody. You know, we're all selling something, and I think your idea. This is how I try to approach things too. Is win-win. You know, how can everybody do well, and that's that's where we're all at. And I want to admonish everyone out there and encourage them to do their own thing and to be able to put themselves forward in a positive way. If that like speaking of those business books, one that comes to mind was a T. Harv Eker book. It's The Millionaire Mind, I think. Oh man, I loved that book. He's so good at telling you and helping you how to present
Bro,
yourself.
and that's one of those books when you understand magic and you go back and reread it, you're like, "Oh, he's telling me something that goes over most people's heads and he gets it. He knows what's going on." And that was one of the first books that after I learned about magic, I went back and reread and I was like, "Holy crap, how did I not catch this before?"
Yeah, I love that book. I found it on Scribed or Scribd. It's the little app that I have, and it's him reading it. And at the end of every chapter, he makes you point it, point in inside your head and say, "I have a millionaire mind." And I'll never forget that book. Just the way that he was he was gentle but firm. I'll just say that. It's a great book. There's so many good ones, but yeah, it's true. A lot of these financial or on the surface seeming books there's so much more to them than what it would appear.
Mhm.
100%.
Okay, I'm going to plug a couple projects real quick. If you enjoyed listening to this and you own a business and you want to get more sales, I have a bunch of free stuff available and a bunch of very low cost stuff available over at advertisingcheatcodes.com. You can find all of my books on advertising and sales pages and sales and marketing over there. Uh, I am 100% proud of that website, so I have no problem shamelessly plugging it. If you own a business, go to advertisingcheatcodes.com. And then I just recently started a project with my daughter. She's actually the one that first got me. She got she got me to buy her some oracle cards and I was so against it. I was like, ugh, I felt so icky going into the crystal store with her and buying her these oracle cards, and she was all about it. She's like, magic is real, don't you understand? I was like, okay, I'm just gonna play along because I don't want you hating me and rebelling against me when you're 16 and whatever. So but she and I recently started a sticker company. It's called stickerspells.com. Bunch of magical inspired stickers over there, some cute witches stickers, some magical symbol stickers. And also, there's a free training on how I do sigil magic. The story that I told you about earlier is reiterated in that training, and it takes you through from A to Z how to do sigil magic and gives you some shortcuts on how to make it work. Like I said, it worked for me right out the bat. 24 hours later, I got exactly what I asked for. I'm not guaranteeing that it'll do the same thing for you, but I've had a lot of people take the course and then write me back and be like, dude, I did it and it worked. And so you can check that out over at stickerspells.com. So, business owner into advertising and marketing, advertisingcheatcodes.com. Somebody who enjoyed the more mystical aspect of this podcast. If you want to help support my daughter's fledgling business, stickerspells.com. I'd love to take your money either way. And I'm confident that what you get in return for it will be way more valuable than the couple of dollars you throw my way. So, super proud of both of those websites, and I would heavily recommend checking them out.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely check them out. They're in the notes on YouTube, and will be in the notes on the podcast. And I put them links as well in the live chat. So check that stuff out, everybody. Take some notes. Take some notes with your eyes. See what you like. See what you don't like. See what appeals to you and what resonates with you. And as you think about what it is that you want, right, and what you don't want, and start to dial those things in. And yeah, I won't be live next week. I'll be doing a show. But I will be back the next week with Abby, the Wonder Woman of our community. One of my favorite people ever. We've talked a lot about dreams and stuff. She's been bodybuilding, and she just did her first competition, so she's going to come and chat a little bit about that. She's had an amazing transformation and is an awesome person. She knows a lot about health, a lot about dreaming. We'll talk about some of that stuff. So we'll see y'all on, I reckon that'll be the 17th. We'll see y'all back on the 17th. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Virginia, so good to see you. Chris, Kevin, oh my goodness. And Honey, it's awesome to see you. Hey, Carla, thank you all so much. Y'all are amazing. Hi, Chris. Hello, everyone. Have a great night. Karen, thanks for stopping by. Jamie, you're the man. I'll talk to you soon. And we'll talk. We'll unpack some Gurdjieff here soon. Thanks, everybody, again. You can find me at bootsygreenwood.com. I'm just hanging out there for now, working on some comedy stuff, and I'll be doing some intermittent podcasting. So we'll see y'all again on the 17th, and I am looking forward to it. Thanks again for hanging out. Peace, and we'll see y'all next time.